The research skill that college students struggle with most is how to pose a question. I constantly try to teach students that they need to ask questions and that the suspense in writing a good research paper comes from the kind of questions you pose and the way in which you go about answering them. I'm working with seniors who are trying to write an original thesis, and I keep having to tell them that instead of coming up with the answers out of their own head without having even posed a question, they need to pose a question, and then you go out into the world, into the library, into the internet as well, and you try to think of different answers to the question and then weigh those answers, and after a while, having weighed the answers, come up with the one that you find most satisfying and convincing.
One of the ways that I've noticed that they're different is that they're a lot more difficult. They're like, the topics have to be more specific, whereas I feel like in high school it was like, oh, like just put two contrasting ideas and then like compare them. Whereas like now it's like, oh, like here is your idea and now find like resources that can prove it.
Students need to know that their questions matter. That if they have doubts about something, if they don't believe something, that's what they should be doing when they're doing research.
In high school, I wish I had learned about how many different types of sources were out there, because I was limited to what my teacher had given to us in high school, and here in college, you are allowed to look through everything that you want as far as what you want to put in your paper.
You have this huge like database where you can just like go into, and you know, it just, you type in keywords, you know, it's like, oh, I want to look into this one issue, and it just, you have books, you have articles, you have online articles that you can get the database at home. You don't even have to be on campus. And then for most classes where you do have to redo a research paper, you have like a day where a librarian goes and says, you know, like, we're like here to like help you find like research stuff, and here's like the easy ways to like look for things in our database and things like that. So you're like kind of trained, but I feel like in one of my first classes here, I either wasn't there for that day or they kind of assumed that you knew. And I had a really hard time writing that paper because I was doing like my research like on Google, like Google Scholar, and it's like not as good, I guess, you know, it's like not what you should be doing, you know, like you shouldn't be like typing it into necessarily like Google or like, oh, just like this topic, because you don't know where those sources are from, you know. So it's like, I feel like that was the most difficult thing for me.
Students tend to just kind of take the first thing that comes to them, and they really need to learn how to, you know, not only take the first things that come to them, but also look at, you know, where did that source come from? How are they, how is it relevant to what you're looking for? And just, you know, is it a good source and is it a dependable source?
You cannot just go and grab whatever. You just have to know how to differentiate from something you can use and something you cannot.
You have to find those resources where one article says, oh, we found that, you know, kids can do this, and then on the other one it's like, oh, kids can't do that. But it's like you don't just look at their arguments, you look at the way they ran their tests, you look at the way that they discuss their tests, the ways that they say what they found is in a certain way, or things like they have to evaluate not just what they say they found, but you have to evaluate their methods and things like that. It's a lot more steps.
I tend to start writing papers about 2 to 3 weeks before it's essentially due. I do a very in-depth content analysis. I try to gather as much research, as much material as I can before I go into doing this paper. Essentially, it helps me prep. The second week, I tend to start doing outlines, kind of weighing the arguments, what is stronger, what is weaker, and kind of getting more perspective from it, whether it's from my GSI, a graduate student instructor, or my professor, him or herself. And then in the third week, that's when I kind of do like a brain dump of what I'm writing, and then I kind of start synthesizing and just really getting the paper together.
Don't be afraid to go ask for help, because I know a lot of it about doing research is you're afraid to go out and find that extra help when there's help available for you, and not to limit yourself to the first 2 pages of Google.
It's not just college-bound students that need these skills. it's all students, because everybody in life is going to have a need for quality information, whether they're using it in an academic sense or whether they're using this information in a personal sense. If they're looking on the web for medical information, they need to know whether it's valid, whether it's something that they can rely on. If they're looking for financial information. So I would say that the kind of skills that students need in college are very much related to what they need in life.
If I was able to give advice to high school students, I would say definitely start soon, push yourself and really work on your analytical skills. Start trying to practice what you think college would be like now, and don't try to take the easy way out, essentially, because just because you're in high school doesn't mean it's not a good time to learn and really explore this type of skill.